Hey friends, so today I wanted to take a look at a little story that came out a couple days ago, and I didn't hear about it until today actually, and then I didn't even know how to cover it. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving, and today, now, the day after, we're going to be looking at Superman and why he's still relevant. Now, Variety has gotten a little flack for something that they reported on, which they didn't really even say. And that's where they were talking about how the DC film universe is progressing, how different movies are being made, and then talking about Warner Brothers after mentioning Batman, who obviously they have sort of this plan with the Batman. They were talking about Warner Brothers and said the studio has less clarity on what to do with Superman, a character who has now been rebooted 2 different times in the last 13 years, once with Brandon Routh, and later with Henry Cavill, without landing on a winning strategy. Superman has also appeared frequently on television in shows such as Lois and Clark and Smallville, which has led to some fears at Warner's that the market could be oversaturated with hot takes on all things Clark Kent. To help find a way to make Superman relevant to modern audiences, Studio Brass has been polling lots of high-profile talent. They go in to talk about J.J. Abrams, Michael B. Jordan. The thing is, they're reporting on Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is the one who seems to not think that Superman is relevant to a modern day audience. So I've seen Variety get a little flack for this from people not actually reading the article and just reading a tweet snippet. This is directed at Warner Brothers. Secondly, I think that Warner Brothers is completely missing the point if they really think Superman isn't relevant anymore. It's now become sort of a meme to say Superman is OP and stupid and dumb because he has a lot of powers and there's bad writers on the comic a lot of the time. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Now, a character can be good and get bad comics. Just look at something like Batman Odyssey. You know, there are horrendous Batman comics that exist, just like absolute abortions of the comic medium that exist for Batman. But you know what? Batman is really cool. He's always seen as really cool, and even some of those bad comics, or at least mediocre ones, they sort of get a pass and sell for just being Batman. Superman in the past was this as well, and he still sells fairly well, but he doesn't have the same pull as Batman, I would argue, now, with modern day audiences. And I wanted to talk about why that is and why Superman is still relevant. But the first thing that I think we need to take a look at is just the fact that Superman has been mishandled a lot. This does not make Superman a bad character, and there are people who love the New 52 Superman. I think it started great with the Grant Morrison run on Action Comics, but overall it's seen as sort of just a middle ground comic book. It doesn't really push the medium too hard in either direction. It's not really seen as revolutionary like Scott Snyder's Batman, and so there's a good multi-year run there of Superman just kind of not doing too well and not having tons of good stories. There are good New 52 Superman stories, but even recently in Rebirth, we've seen Superman come back to form and sort of come back to the character that a lot of people love. So what makes Superman relevant? Why is he still relevant? Superman, he obviously stands for hope. That's something I think everyone knows. This S stands for hope, or the symbol stands for hope is something that's also memed on. But with build-up, it's true. Superman is a guy who can't die, but has to make decisions about the life and death of others on a daily basis. Superman is the kind of person to step in front of a bullet for someone, and yes, it won't kill him. But he's the kind of guy that would do it even if it would. Superman was raised by Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent, obviously rural farmers. They were sort of a moral compass for Clark Kent growing up, and Superman's had to deal with a lot over the years, just from being not even, I would say not American, but also not human, and yet being more human than many people. Superman's obviously Kryptonian, he's not a human being, but he has the heart and sort of the soul of a human. That's how he's written in the best stories with him. Superman's the kind of guy, and this is why he's relevant, he is the kind of guy who would take the time when he's dying to stop and talk a young woman down from a ledge because he knows that it's not worth her throwing her life away just because she's had a bad day. Superman's the kind of guy, again, who would step in front of harm to defend other people in the world around him when he could have everything. Superman can move faster than people can see. If he wanted to, he could rob banks, he could take everything in the world, he could take people, he could take objects, he could do whatever he wanted. He's essentially God-level power, and yet he uses it to defend people. Superman's the kind of person who, when challenged with the option to kill a so-called team of heroes who has tried to kill him more than once, instead uses it to prove a point that killing doesn't change anything. If anything, it just makes the person doing it a lot closer to what they're trying to stop. You can kind of see this in something like What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, a really good Superman comic that sort of stands on its own that I'd highly recommend you check out. And Superman is also a Christ figure. And I know that's not popular terminology anymore, especially in today's world. It's not something that's comfortable to talk about, but he is this savior figure, an analog of a savior who is willing to die for the world around him. You can see that in multiple stories, even in movies like Superman Returns, or in stories like All-Star Superman. You can see it also in, obviously, Batman v Superman, despite how many people dislike that. That is supposed to be one of the core concepts of the character. The problem is even that isn't always handled well. And that's where I think that this idea that the relevancy of the character is in question comes from. It's from Mishandling Superman. Writers need to stop looking at the next big Brainiac or world-ending threat, I should say, like Doomsday, that Superman should punch with his fists. And they should look at the emotional struggles of Superman. They should look at the emotional struggles of someone who has to choose every day between taking what he wants and doing what's right. They should look at the emotional struggles of someone who is trying to raise a son. That's really one of the most human concepts to come out of Superman in the Rebirth era, is raising Jonathan Kent, John Kent, his son, and trying to make him into not another Superman, but a good young man, a good person. Superman has to try and live in a world with a partner who is human when he himself is not. He has to hold back every time he punches someone so he doesn't shatter their jaw. Superman doesn't fight the physical. I mean, he does, but that's not supposed to be the point of the character. Superman fights beliefs. Superman fights bigotry. Superman fights back against the ugly moral things in the world, and he stands between us and evil as a symbol of hope so that we can be better. And I think too often Superman is just seen as a battering ram. Throw Superman at a problem, it'll be cool. And that's not what he is. That's not what he ever was supposed to be. And because of that, we're in the situation that we're in now, where studio executives just think nobody cares about Superman anymore. And it's because they've mishandled him over and over and over. And you know what? Because of that, a lot of people are right to not care. But I highly recommend you check out some of the better takes on Superman. Again, All-Star Superman is one of the best, it's probably my favorite Superman run of all time. It's off in its own continuity. You can check it out and enjoy it. You can just read it if you want to, and not read any other Superman story, and you just have that Superman's story, essentially. Or you can go off, you can read some of the individual issues, like, obviously, What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way is fantastic. Or you can read some of the Rebirth Superman, which is done, in my opinion, incredibly well, and goes back to that heart and soul of the character, instead of just a battering ram that's thrown at intergalactic threats. Superman stands for hope. Hope is something that we need in the world when, without getting too political, the world is just so divided and just so hateful towards other people. Everybody thinks they're in the right. Nobody wants to listen. Nobody wants to talk. Nobody wants to admit that no one else thinks that they're the bad guy. And Superman can provide hope for a world like that, and hope that we can be better. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'd love to do more videos talking about characters like this, and maybe even go more in depth in the future if it's something you're interested in. And I would love to know your opinion on Superman. And I really, really do urge you, not every character is for everybody, but I urge you, if you think Superman is just an OP garbage character, to seek out some of the better Superman stories that are actually well written and give them a chance. As someone who grew up thinking Superman had a cool costume and not much else, it really opened my eyes to start reading things like All-Star Superman that really portrayed this character as human, as a person who had feelings and struggles inside themselves, even if they weren't always physical. And that's where a lot of our human problems come from. They're not, oh man, am I going to get attacked physically? That can happen, sure. But your day-to-day struggles are going to be more about things in the emotional realm. Isolation and alienation from other people. Feeling like you're different than others around you. Wondering how to be anyone's hero or why anyone looks up to you. These are the things that make Superman who he is, and I really do urge you to reevaluate your take on the character if you don't have any examples of Superman being that to you. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your takes on the character. What are your favorite or least favorite Superman stories? If you want to ever see anything really funny, check out the Superman and his pal Jimmy Olsen covers from way back. They're really hilarious, with things like Superman just refusing to give Jimmy water in the desert. That's a great one. They always make me laugh. And I'll catch you in the next one. Have a fantastic day.